Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season 3 finale of Invincible. I said that weird. Great season finale. Holy hell. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I love there was no preamble. It immediately hit you with the title card and immediately pick up right where the last episode left off, and this clash between Invincible and Conquest, which I felt so stupid. Even though I literally said last episode, oh my god, it's Jeffrey Dean Morgan voicing Conquest, it never clicked in my head until someone else brought it up. I was like, oh, the Walking Dead connection, which makes that ending of that fight that much more poetic. You're like, you know what you were doing on the voice casting front. I mean, it's Jeffrey Dean Morgan, he's going to nail it and do a great job with it, but it's still just kind of like the poetry behind it, this being an Image comic, The Walking Dead being an Image comic, these people being connected to The Walking, it's so beautifully poetic in so many regards, but the fight is insane. Like, the fact is, like, classic fight clash of just, like, every window shattering, like, people getting blown away from the shockwave of it. Because Mark isn't, like, holding back. Like, he is kind of going full throttle. He's pissed. Because they talk about it later on that, like, Eve was out for, like, a week. So, and that was during day 2 of the whole Invincible War situation. So, it's been a little bit longer. So, Mark, it's had, like, so that gave Mark maybe 5 to 6 days to fully process, still dealing with everything, and especially because the world is still mourning and still picking itself up, piecing itself together. And now this, so it's like he needs a punching bag to let it all out. And it's just like, I love Conquest is such a sociopath, just the way he's talking to Mark, and he's just like, come on, kid. Come on, this should be exciting. I even love during the fight, he's just like, this will be the part where Nissa gives you the whole spiel about you shouldn't resist and kind of submit to the Viltrumite rule. But he's like, honestly, I don't care about that. I want you to resist. Give me a fight. I need this. I live for it. I love it. Dude is a complete another sociopath, especially later on when he's fighting Mark and he does that whole breakdown of just like, I'm so alone. I'm like, what are you doing? You were so, once again, like when you're alone, he's like, I am feared by the other Viltrumites. They're scared of me. No one wants to deal with me. That's why they send me out. Because it's also like, I am the strongest of them. When I go out there in a very Negan way, you get shit done, right? So, and it's so interesting because he's like, because I've gone out there and become so stronger, because I live up to my name, the Viltrumites fear me even more. And, he's like even saying like, I don't even get a proper name. Conquest. I got the title of what I do, and that's all I am. And it's so kind of sad. And he's even telling Mark, you'll take that to your grave. Because he's like, some days I want to cry. I'm like, wow. So I guess it's like when you grow up in the Viltrumite Empire and things are what it is a society built off the pure-blooded and the strongest. It's so ironic that a society that like revels in strength would fear its greatest person, because he says like, yeah, they call me unstable. It's like, yeah, you sound unstable, homie. Understandable. Like, you are probably the least, even though like the Viltrumites themselves are batshit crazy, fucking genocidal maniacs, that it's so interesting to have that, like that self-realization of just like, oh, I want to cry sometimes. And it's just like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, the show's not trying to make us sympathetic for him. It's just the fact is, it's almost like you want sympathy from people, but you call like other like connections to people weakness, but you have a weakness of your own. But I guess for him, it's like, yeah, I might be weak, but I bury that weakness and I get shit done, so it doesn't matter. But either way, the battle is clashing and just people sadly getting caught up in the like crossfire of it. There's that one guy when like Mark got knocked into the building and a guy like, both him and Mark and Conquest were falling, and then like Conquest slams Mark down, and you see the guy just fall and land and die right next to him. I was hoping someone would fly in and catch him, but it's like, I'm sure a lot of the city's probably evacuated. We see there's quite a few people in the street, but who knows how many of those buildings are actually evacuated. But it's just like more death and destruction. But don't get it twisted. I feel like Mark is honestly putting up a better fight against Conquest than he did against Nolan. That was such a one-sided smackdown. He couldn't really do anything to his dad. He's doing some damage to, because he couldn't even do anything to Anissa either. So that's interesting. But like, once again, he has been training in between season 2 and 3. Every fight, it's almost like that saying thing of, well, the more you get your shit pushed in, the stronger you become. And Mark has gone through a lot, plus facing off against all those other Invincibles has kind of been extra training too. And once again, he's extra pissed, kind of going a little all out, because he's always been too afraid. And like, there's always that subconscious thing of, I'm always going to be holding back to some extent, because I'm never going to want to go too ballistic. But it's like, I'm holding back at least a little bit less, because I need to hit something. And so I love just like the flow of this battle and just how it all plays out. And just like, oh, that brutal moment where it's just like, oh, so that sick, once again, playing into Conquest's psychoticness, them in space and him blowing a blood bubble. And I'm like, I almost thought he was going to like fling it like a bullet or something. That's what I thought he was doing. And then he shapes it into a heart like, I'm like, this dude is twisted. Once again, the whole fight and everything just showcases his personality and how twisted he is. But like, that's some next level disturbing shit that he would pause in the middle of battle to do. That is insane. And at the same time this fight's going on, you have like Cecil freaking out, because it's like, Jesus Christ, can't we catch a break? Now, like, one of the most strongest of the Viltrumites have probably come here. This is the worst time, especially consider a lot of the heroes on Earth probably wouldn't have stood a chance against Viltrumites. They kind of barely made it through marks. I mean, to be fair, these marks weren't as strong as their mark in some capacities, stronger in other capacities. But and you didn't have to fully deal with all of them. Like, the last 8 or so got portaled off somewhere else. So, you lucked out in that regard. But I love that Cecil's trying to get Sinclair to make more Reanimen, and lo and behold, whose bodies are he using? Like, the deceased Invincibles that were still left. And it's like, well, I mean, it's effed up, but it also makes a lot of sense that you would do that. Why waste that good opportunities? These are good soldiers to have in your back pocket, especially against, well, you know how strong Mark is, and if you can utilize an undead army of them to fight the Viltrumite army, bolster your, because he even told Mark last episode, we need to rebuild. A lot of heroes in this world died fighting like the Invincible War. So, but they're not ready yet. And Sinclair's is like, it take 2 weeks or something like that. So it's like, well, what do we do? As this like fight is clashing on, and then you have Oliver being sent out by his mom, because she's torn, because she's like, because for her, when she sees this, all she's thinking about, like, holy crap, my son just went through it, facing all those versions of himself, and now she's thinking, holy crap, it's a Viltrumite. All she can think is, it's going to be a repeat of what happened with Nolan. Nolan nearly killed my boy, and she wants Mark to have the best chance. So it's like, maybe Oliver can help, but now she's conflicted, because she's like, I'm sending my baby boy out there to the like lambs to the slaughter, both of them. And even if it's just like, because she's already had to do that, she had to make that concession last episode with the Invincible War. Now she's doing it again against people who are definitely going to be stronger than them. So it's like, as a mother, you're torn, because you're like, you do want to like love your children, want to protect them, but you're also sending them potentially to their death. It's like, I couldn't even imagine what, and it comes out later on for Debbie, the guilt and stuff she feels, but we'll talk about that later. But, because even Paul tried to console her, like, hey, your boys have been through a lot and they come out on the other side. But she's like, not like this. Because she, once again, all she can probably think of is not even just the Invincible War stuff. It's like, all she can think about is the state Mark was in when Nolan did what he did. And it's just like, this guy is probably stronger than, like, she's always scared. This is the most scared she's probably ever been in her life. Like, obviously, over the course of the series, things have been scary. But like I said, we'll talk about that more later. And Oliver shows up to back Mark up, and obviously lands in some blows, but can't do anything against Conquest, because he's never really had a proper fight against an actual Viltrumite. At least Mark has, and he's shown that he can go toe-to-toe with some, to some extent. Like, obviously, the whole Thraxa fight situation, obviously, kind of fell short against Anissa, but once again, he is stronger. Oliver's not as strong as him, hasn't trained as much, hasn't trained against what it's like to face a Viltrumite. Yeah, you faced the Invincibles, but it's like, yeah, you had other heroes backing you up. It's a little bit of a different story when it's just you and Mark, and even at points, it's just you. And then, like, Mark is trying to push his brother away. I mean, I thought was so, like, ooh, scary and nerve-wracking. I mean, for one, Oliver getting in the mix of this, but the fact is he couldn't even keep up at first. He's trying so hard to push to get closer to Mark, but like Conquest and him are so much faster than him, so he can't even catch up to the battle at first. And you're just like, oh, that's just because like what's racking through his mind of just like, they just like, oh my God, my brother needs my help, and I feel like I won't be able to get there in time to back him up. And he does, but like I said, he still kind of gets laid out, and Mark is trying to do everything he can to protect regular people, protect his brother, especially when Conquest is making a whole point. I'm curious, because Conquest doesn't know that that's Nolan's other kid, that's Mark's brother. He's just like, oh, you're some other fighter here. He doesn't recognize, oh, you're a Viltrumite, And I'm curious what his reaction would have been if, because he's like, oh, you're standing up to me, cool, kid, but I'm about to put you in your place. I'm so curious how he would have reacted if he knew that was Nolan's other kid, because he had talked about it with Mark, where it's like, oh, like, hearing about, I think he was saying something, he referenced Nolan, I'm forgetting the context of, like, oh yeah, he talked about Nolan having, even in his younger years, probably around the same age Mark is, he's like, I saw the potential that, like, even at a young age that Nolan had, and now look at you, you're kind of a pale comparison, and he's even kind of being like, yo, I guess I need to motivate you enough to fight back. Hell, he almost repeated the train situation. It wasn't quite the same, but it is to some degree, where like he rushed Mark to a city, and he's like, no, look, I want you to see this. And they're whizzing by people so fast that people are exploding body parts, like limbs are getting, like you saw that one kid, his whole arm just like shot off. He kind of did the train situation where he's pushing Mark through. I don't think it was as devastating, but Mark like broke free of it and is, duking it out with him. And then Eve steps up, and he's scared, because he's just like, no, what happened last episode, I almost thought I lost you. Now, like, this guy's too tough. I mean, I almost forgot to talk about it, but like him almost ripping Oliver in half. He said like, oh, and him getting disgusting about it. Like, oh, like, can you feel that? It's like, you're going to feel the muscles tear, and then finally you're going to start feeling your skin being pulled apart. He was literally trying to rip. Also, like, speaking of the Nolan fight, like, the fact is, like, with one punch, he knocked out Oliver's teeth. You're just like, the moment they're falling out, you're like, oh, it's like a repeat of Mark. Even worse, because I think, because Mark lost a good chunk of teeth, Oliver lost more in this fight. You're like, oh God, because it's that thing of like, yo, he's practically a baby out here on the battlefield. You're just like, just seeing him go through that, you're just scared for him. Once again, I don't know the comic. I'd assume Oliver is going to be around for a while, but you don't know. So it's still just kind of like, the fact is, like, you don't know like what's going to happen. But yeah, Eve shows up, and even though she's banged up, she's just like, right, I'm gonna get it. Goes full Adam Eve, suits herself up again like she did. Was that last episode she suited up? No, I think it was episode 5 against the dragon dude. I don't think she suited up during, yeah, she didn't suit up during Invincible War stuff. No, it might have been during the Powerplex fight. I think it was during the Powerplex fight she might have suited up, but it might have also been a dragon fight. I'm conflating stuff, so forgive me. Either way, she's suiting up. And I love the fight where he tries to come towards her, and she's like, I changed the density of the air. And then she's like pulling out all the stops. She's like throwing out these giant mace, like slinging hammers at him. And then like throwing like these spiked balls, doing everything she can. I love at one point she grabs one, and then like she shoots out one, and he tries to hit it, and she turns it into water. I was like, yo. And the fact is, at one point she tried to like put like a power a spear kind of around his head to kind of block his air, and she's just like wailing on him. But the problem is, she literally just woke up, and she's too exhausted. She's pushing herself beyond her boundaries. And then Conquest proceeds to rip through her armor, and then like hit one hit from him, like her part of her face gets ripped. Then he like stabs her in the stomach, and just like her guts out. You're just like, no way this is happening. I was like, like what's going to happen? I did not know. I was like, and Mark screaming out for Cecil. So like, Cecil, please help. Come here and get her. And you're just like, fuck, dude. And obviously from Mark, because Mark is already banged up too, because like hit like Conquest like hit and smashed his legs, so his bones sticking out, so his legs messed up. But Mark's pushing through the pain. And I love that line to Conquest. Because, once again, Conquest going on about like, oh, like the fact is, you might want to say your final words. Oops. too late. And then just Mark being like, because he was like, oh, you're so certain. And Mark is like, I am. He's like, the fact is, you might be stronger than me. You might be faster than me, but you will not survive this day. Like, you will not see tomorrow. And he's like, oh, you're so certain about it. Because I think even Conquest had said something similar where Mark was like, are you so certain that you'll win this? And he's like, dead certain. And they even try to give Mark pep talk, like, come on. You have a chance. Go ahead. Like, once again, psychotic. And I love that first clash where Marcus they rush towards each other, and one like destroys his gauntlet. So I guess he has no hand at all. Like, I guess he lost it at one point in time. I wouldn't be surprised if he was fighting other Viltrumites and lost his hand that way. But either way, the gauntlet's destroyed, but Mark's hand is like busted in the process. But Mark doesn't stop, one-handed and kicking, still doing his thing. And it's just like, oh, like, and I love that line of like, oh, just because you get mad, that doesn't make you stronger. I guess almost playing into the notion of like, oh, you think if your rage consumes you, like, that's going to make you stronger? Because we've seen Mark pop off when he gets mad. So you'd be under that assumption. But he's like, oh, that's not going to be enough. And then Mark digs into like his shoulder blade or just in that area and bites. It's like, yo, no holds bar. Like, this is the most feral we've, like, I'd say Mark against Engstrom specifically, the end of that, feral. This is probably the most feral we've seen Mark, where it's like, yo, I've got a busted leg, a busted hand. I don't give a shit. I'm going balls to the wall in this fight. And so he's still giving it everything he's got, but it's still not enough. Conquest is still outpacing him. But the fact is, Conquest is impressed with like how far he's going. And then we catch Eve, who's shifting her body. And I kind of thought that was probably what was happening, because it's like, she's in a moment, she's removing the limiter from herself, because the stipulation with her is she can't change organic matter. Inorganic matter, sure, but not like pure organic matter. And now she's recovering her body, and in that one moment she sends off a blast towards Conquest, and like burns off like the top layer, like a good chunk of layer of skin, but he's not dead. She ends up passing out from it all, and he was like, oh, I still have enough in me, boy, because he like breaks Mark's other hand, because like Mark started like wailing on him over and over again, and he's just like, you think that's enough? Like, I still got enough in me to fight you, boy. And Mark's just like, not enough, and then like starts head smashing him. I was like, fuck yes. But the way his face was looking already, I was like, oh, yo, we're reversing this Walking Dead thing, aren't we? And it's like, fuck yeah, we are. And once again, the most feral Mark has ever been. He's like, huh? Is this what you wanted? And he's just like, yes, like, I always take the good and the bad. And just Mark kept going and going and going. And I was like, yep, it's like a repeat of the Engstrom thing, except I'm not beating you to death with my hands. I'm beating you to death with headbutts. And just Mark is drenched in blood. And I'm like, yep. And then there he is, his head smashed. And I was like, oh, ooh. Once again, to Walking Dead fans, they're like, retribution. You know, you kind of got like, yeah. Once again, the beautifulness of it. It's like, once again, you planned that on purpose, knowing like what the source material is. It's like, what we got to have the ultimate like revenge like meetup between Stephen Yeun and Jeffrey Dean Morgan, right? So, but either way, I wonder like, because you never know like how much, I don't know, like, I'm sure like just for prep, like Steven's probably read some. I don't know if he's read all of Invincible. I mean, you know, it depends on he might have talked about it, because I'm curious, you know, sometimes like how familiar certain people are with the source material of what they're adapting. So I'm curious, like, did Jeffrey go into this knowing like, oh shit, this is what he's like, I'm down for it, you know? Maybe just in general his work on The Walking Dead, where he's like, yo, I want to be a part of something like this. I was trying to think, like, has he voiced the character on here already? I don't remember. I don't think he has. I think this is the only things he's voiced on Invincible. But either way, when it is all said and done, I was like, wow. But I'm like, is he dead? I was like, Mark, you want to make sure he's double dead. You kind of did this already. But for him, he's also concerned about Eve. He's like, are you okay? Like, he's like, I thought you died. And they like both are kind of awake, but they both lose consciousness. And then you have Cecil and some of the other heroes show up, and he's like, huh. Because it's like, yo, like, Mark came out the victor in this regard. It's like, once again, no one saw what he did to Engstrom. So like, they get a small taste of it. So I was like, that's fascinating. But then immediately in my brain, I'm like, well, we see what Cecil's doing to the Invincible bodies. What does that mean about conquest? Oh, we'll get to that later too. But Mark was out for a couple days and finally wakes up. And, I love that Eve references the Adam Eve special. She's like, I've done it once. Because she hasn't, like, we got to see that story. Because the only, like, person who probably knew that story was Rex. Because Rex knows her family situation because they talked about it, I think, last season. But, like, she hasn't, it's probably, it's a thing of, she's like, I never found the right time to talk about how fucked up my childhood and my circumstances were. I don't even know if she knows about Valerie being dead, which is so interesting, the timing wise on that. So I'm curious to know, like, what her mom tell her. I mean, I also love when she got up and, like, and she was saying Mark, and it's like, wait, Mark is in, wait, that's your boyfriend? So now it's like, oh, like, they kind of know he's invincible now, I think. But yeah, like, because I'd almost wondered if, like, it doesn't seem like it's permanent. It does seem like, it might be the thing of, and this might be the future for Adam Eve. It's like, when you move past the limiters inside of you again and again, eventually those limiters might break. And that might be what we're kind of like leaning into near the end of the episode when they hook up. I'll get to that in a second, but I'll go ahead and talk about it. Like when they're about to have sex and she takes off his clothes with her powers. Because I've seen that image. Like I've come across like TikToks and YouTube shorts that are because of people just being like, oh, what are they adapting? What are they not from the comics? That is something straight from the comic, that shot of like that ooze around his costume. I was like, oh, I guess that's not happening. And then it immediately happens. I'm like, oh. So I was like, what does that mean? I guess it's something maybe because her situation is she had a traumatic experience last time she activated her powers and was able to like alter a guy's memories and made him forget everything about her. But like this time, like she rebuilt her own body and like saved herself. And she even said like, I didn't die. I came very, very close. And I'm curious, is it because you're talking about a traumatic experience? Well, I mean, almost dying is very traumatic too, but we're just talking about a pure traumatic experience versus a traumatic experience because you almost died. I'm wondering, like, did it remove the limiters? Like, does she not realize the limiters have been permanently removed now? Or what? So like maybe her power is slipping a little more out of her control because she's thinking like, well, things are fine, but like you who've never been able to like, I don't know, because that ooze could easily be something else too. But it just seems interesting that it could just be something on her like. Well, I'm wondering. I was wondering for a second. Like I was like, not unless the costume still has like some of Mark's blood or something, and I'm like, did her power in her like. Where her power is now, like, intertwining with, like, Viltrumite blood, did that cause, like, what is that? You know, comic book people are like, oh, they're doing the thing, obviously it's set up for this, yada, yada, yada. I have no idea what to expect from that. But either way, I brought it up earlier, and I was talking about, I was going to circle back to it. The Debbie conversation. That is so heartbreaking. That alone made me want to cry. I was like, that is so sad. Like she's beating herself up and just like, cause she looks back on everything. She's like, this is my fault. Mark's like, no, it's not your fault. She's like, yes, it is. She's like, I go back on those conversations I had with your dad saying like, oh, did you get your powers yet? And then how disappointed you were that you didn't have them. And now it's like, I was so quick to push you out of the nest to be out there, be a superhero because of Nolan and stuff. It's like, I got swept up in that bullshit. And she's like, now I'm seeing here, you're out there fighting every day, fighting for your life. And it just breaks her heart because she blames herself. It's like, I pushed you to do this because I didn't think about it. I was just like, oh, like, you know, she saw like, she never thought things would like, she never saw Nolan really in a bad enough situation, but she's seen Mark in one over and over and over and over again. And it's just frustrating. And she blames herself because it's like, I put this on you. Like, she's like, the moment like you didn't get your powers or whatever, I should have taken you away from all of this, but I didn't because she was swept up in it. Like she believed like, well, nothing's ever going to be too bad. No one's always going to be around. And now it's like she already last season was, you know, I don't want to say spiraling because it feels like a disservice just to like relegate it to spiraling, but like her falling apart, like really thinking like, you know, in aftermath of season 1 and going through everything she went through in season 2 and the guilt that she has. And now it's like even more so because it also, once again, she sent her other baby boy out there in battle too. She just feels like a terrible mom. It's like, but Mark telling her is like, no, Mom, you did everything right. Because you did. Because this is one of the few multiverses, the universes out there where Mark turned out good. And that's because you did, you know? Now that doesn't necessarily mean there's shortcomings on the other Debbie's part. Just like, the smallest things could have changed that made it so that Mark went down the dark route instead of a good route. But you raised two good boys, and you've done that like on your own. She even said it like that came out last season. She was there for Mark more than Nolan was, because Nolan was gone all the time. Like, Mark is more her responsibility, and she's the one that made him the man that he is. It's like this world wouldn't be where it's at right now without you, Debbie. You are the heart and soul of all this because you made Mark into who he is. So when it's all said and done, though, we're also catching up with other story beats. First and foremost, we find out Battle Beast is still alive. Obviously, he ripped that Viltrumite to shred. He's just out in space frozen. An alien species finds him and grabs him, and he's just still like, more. I want more. Then we catch up with the technicians. They basically ruined their world, and they turned themselves into what they are now as a purpose of trying to survive their world. It was their way of adapting. But it's like they want another world, but they want so much more than that. So, like, it almost feels like they're kind of in that same vein as Invincible, where it's like, well, they wanted to conquer other worlds. I guess it's like we failed our world, so we need to find a new world to kind of rebuild and kind of correct the mistakes we made previously. Or, it might be interesting because let's not forget what Angstrom Levy's like original goal was. He wanted to fix every world and pull all the versions of himself across the multiverse, so that it's like, hey, these problems here, this universe has a solution that this universe doesn't have, or my universe doesn't have. That, once again, it started off altruistic. Maybe the technicians were in the same way, so it's kind of a meeting of two minds. Well, kind of four in a lot of ways. Well, even more so if you think about, like, Angstrom probably still has all those other Angstroms in his head type of thing, but it is a thing of like they might both had altruistic goals, and they both went down paths that ruined a lot. The technicians destroyed and ruined their world, versus like all the destruction and death that Angstrom's caused by his trauma and vendetta, and just mental illness. But I'm curious to see where that goes. That's just me spitballing, throwing that out there. I'm curious to see what direction that ends up going. We also have Rex's funeral. Rudy as Robot. And I thought that was interesting because obviously Amanda's not a fan of him doing that, but he's in the crowd with Amanda and the other heroes. And then it's Robot up there talking about like Rex and everything, of like talking about who he was. And it's just like, that's the thing, like Rex was like, he was a dick, he was an asshole, but he was also a friend. And what he did, and I thought that was kind of a beautiful send-off. And we find out Rudy saying going forward he's going to change his name to Rex, because that way Rex, he is made from Rex's DNA. So now you're like, oh, the Rex we saw in season 2's finale from the future, that was Rudy. He just, at that point, he had already taken up Rex's name. So probably a lot of the stuff that happened now happened in the original timeline. Just the difference, the previous timeline where Mark never, it took a long time for him to get saved from the place he had killed Angstrom, and he wasn't in his right mind. So there's probably a lot there that was different, but like the Invincible War and even Rex's death, like all that still happened. But because the biggest question was like, wait, why is Rex inside a robot suit? And now it's like, oh, what happened to Rudy? It's like, well, that is Rudy. And so it's like, interesting. So Rex will survive in that regard, but obviously it's going to be interesting because it's going to be because when he gets older, he's going to look like Rex, but he's just going to be a super smart Rex instead of the lovable, idiotic asshole that we knew. So that's going to be interesting. And I even love that conversation with Amanda where she's like, "Why didn't you go up there?" He's just like, I don't think I would have been able to get through it, And just it's nice having. I think it's easier to do it through the suit, but also being able to stand right beside Amanda, I think. Then, you have Eve, saying what she said, and she couldn't even get through it. Because for her, it's like, Rex was my first, good and bad for a lot of things. And for her, it's just the thing of, yes, he cheated on me a lot, but it's still the thing of, like, the last time she saw him is when she moved out of the tower earlier in the season when they moved back in. after the split with the Guardians. And it's just that situation of like you take life for granted. You always just assume someone's always going to be there, and now they're not. And it's kind of sad too because like Rex also like kind of pushed Mark to like, you know, the whole him and Eve thing. He's just kind of like, blah, blah, blah. Who cares about that? You know, obviously a lot of other people contributed as well, but it's also like Rex wanted them to both be happy because he cared about them. It's like, yeah, him and Mark didn't initially get along, but they became good buds now. And it's like he cares about Eve and he just wants them both to be happy. And it's also going to be a thing of, I kind of set that up and made that happen. So like kind of kudos on me for being a good person for making that happen. There's a little bit of that to it too, but it's just like, man, and just even that part where she's breaking down and just like she turns and Mark's smiling, and for him it's just like, no, it's just it made him just realize how lucky he is. Like this whole Rex saying made him go like, I thought you were gone, I thought I'd lost you, but you are still here with me, and that's something I got to be grateful for because there's so many people like Rex who aren't. And obviously Ray being there too, but she couldn't bring herself to be up there with the rest of the group, and she's just behind the tree and just breaking down. It's just like, it is interesting how a lot of that comes full circle. Like obviously they were there for Kate's funeral. Obviously like even the OG Guardians, you know, like when you think about, was it Red Rush's girlfriend Olga, her breaking down the way she did. So it just kind of like everything's kind of, I think I always use the word Rome, but like reciprocal in a lot of ways. So obviously, a big thing too was Mark being like, "Wait, where's Conquest?" It's like, "Don't worry, he's dead. Show me his body." I thought Mark was going to be like, "Yo, chop that head off. Like it's smashed up, chop it." I'm like, no. I am not going to get caught like lacking again. He even says, "Burn it." I don't want to take the chance the motherfucker comes back. I've learned my lesson because of Engstrom. And then like Cecil's like, okay, but I'm like, you're not going to do it. I was like, you're going to use him for Animan, but turns out that's not the case. Reaniman, but instead he's keeping Conquest alive because I guess it's like, oh, he's still alive, or at least probably going to electrify some parts of his brain to keep him on because they've locked him into something. But it's like, and even Donald's like, normally I don't go against your judgment, sir, but are you sure this is a good idea? For one, if Mark finds out, he's going to be extra pissed because you kept one of the deadliest Viltrumites alive. But he's also like, yo, this place will explode if he even twitches. But it's like, we're going to keep him alive because we're going to pump him for information, which is sad because Nolan and Alan have a secret, but we have no idea where they are. You know, it's like, well, not like Nolan's welcome back to Earth, but you know, it's like probably like you probably have to bring Nolan to the Resistance. What's his name? VIDS. Like probably have to bring him to him. So probably a lot of that's happening behind the scene because it's like, well, because some people are like, yo, this would be an Invincible War, be a perfect time for Nolan and Alan to show up, but they never did. Even the Conquest thing, Nolan or Alan, if you're out there, didn't show up. So who knows what, you know, they don't know what's going down on Earth currently. So, but once again, so I get Cecil's point because he wants to learn everything there is to know about the Viltrumites. Would Conquest give up that information willingly? I don't know. Things will not go the way Cecil probably wants them to, but he is a man that's kind of all about control. And this is war, and he's trying to do everything he can because he's bringing up like, yo, we are up Shit's Creek without a paddle. A lot of our heroes are dead. We are beaten down and bruised. And the fact of the matter is, everything that just happened with Invincible taking on the strongest, what if the rest of the Viltrumites come at us? Once again, there's only 50 purebloods, but there's a whole lot out there that aren't purebloods, but who say that they support the Viltrumite army and empire, but also who's to say the empire would even use them because like they're seen as lesser than like a Invincible barely cracks the mark just because they're okay with him being human because it's acceptable enough species, even though they're lower tier and considered pets. It's still like they are acceptable enough for the Viltrumites versus Oliver. It's like, no, you yourself are definitely an abomination because even the ones that were on Thraxa had more of an issue with Oliver than they did Mark. So because it is that thing of, even Nolan said in season 1, Mark, despite being human, he's practically a full-blooded Viltrumite because the blood of the Viltrumites is so pure. But I'm sure like that's because the human DNA kind of gets heavily watered down versus maybe other alien species. It like, let's say like the human element in the Viltrumite blood is like, it appears as like 5%. Just, that's just, just random number. Maybe look at Oliver's Thraxon side. Maybe that's more like 15-20%. So maybe that's why like they have even more of an issue, because it's like even though you're not more other species than Viltrumite, it's still enough of you to be a disgrace and an abomination. So, but the main thing is Mark's takeaway from all of this, because he tells Oliver, because Oliver's like, right, I can help you out there rebuild things. He's like, I promise I'll listen to you. But he's like, no, you were right. You were right about Angstrom. You were right about the Maulers. For him, it's like, I've made that mistake of letting my enemies live too long. And it's like, I won't do that again. If anyone tries to come after my family or anyone I love, I will not hesitate to kill them anymore. That's just been his struggle once again, because he's struggled since season 2, because he just already from season 1, like, I'm not going to kill anybody. Season 2 was like, I don't want to kill anyone because I don't want to become my dad. I'm scared of becoming my dad. And 3 is kind of like that too, where it's like, I killed someone and I got that trauma and scared to ever repeat that again. But now it's like, I've let it happen too many times. It's like, no, I'm not going to regret what I did to Conquest. Fuck him. And anyone that comes after people I love or care about, I will put them down. If I can put you down without having to worry about it, sure. But if you're threatening people I love, I will cut you down. Becoming more the Viltrumite people wanted him to be. The other Viltrumites, even Conquest, being like, yeah, I want to know, do you even have a Viltrumite heart in you? So, yeah. And then we have our post-credit stinger where we catch up with Damien Darkblood, which we haven't seen him since like, was it like episode 5 is when he got sent back to hell? Which I'm also like, the way he's talking about it like a planet, I'm like, wait, is hell not like the traditional hell? Is it actually is it kind of like a supernatural like alien planet? Or is it like, because he said planet, so like, is he kind of insinuating like hell's a planet? Or did he escape hell and he ended up on a different planet? But he summons someone, he's like, oh yeah, like, I'm going to help you get back on the throne, your lordship. And I'm like, I don't know if that's supposed to be like this world's version of Lucifer or what, but, and it's like, oh, the person now, I know someone, there's someone on the surface that's so powerful, their abilities, you'll be able to kind of use them. And I'm like, at first I was like, Invincible, but then he brings up the Dark Heart, and I was like, oh, it's got to be Nolan, right? Well, for a second there, I was about to say, well, Cecil's kind of got a dark, but I was wondering for a second, like for a split second, I was like, he couldn't have been talking about Cecil, right? But I was like, he has to be talking about Nolan. And he's like, yeah, I found a way to summon him here. So you're like, what the hell is that storyline? So it's like, oh, like Nolan gets sent to hell? I have no idea what to expect from that storyline. Obviously, once again, I have no experience with the source material, so I don't fully know what to expect from all of this going forward. The show is coming back for a 4th season. If I remember correctly, I believe the show got renewed for season 3 and 4 at the same time. I also was seeing something really quickly when I was Googling that. That was saying like they've already started on the voice work for season 4. So they might have been working on season 3 and 4 like simultaneously. So it might not be as long, but whatever the case may be. I'm one of those people. It's like, I know people have an issue of like there being bigger gaps in between seasons. I'm perfectly fine with that. Take as long as you need, especially the animators. Like, take as long as you need. Like, get paid the rightful amount that you deserve to get paid, and also don't get overworked to death, because that's some bullshit. So I want everyone to take their time and just do what they need to under the proper conditions. So that's kind of like my takeaway from all of that. But yeah, I'm excited to see season 4 and see where this journey takes us. See where Mark's journey takes him. I'm curious to see if the blue suit thing continues or whether he goes back to his OG suit, because I don't know what the storyline is, but I know at one point, once again, just little things you pick up because you see images and stuff here. I know Bulletproof puts on the costume, and there's something that happens with Bulletproof in a comic book so that when he popped up, people are like, oh shit, Bulletproof. Oh, his storyline. I'm like, I don't know what that's in reference to. Once again, I'm saying that rhetorically. I don't actually want to know the answer, but it's like he dressed up in Mark's suit as Invincible. So I'm like, does he do that while Mark's still keeping the blue suit, and whatever Bulletproof storyline is when it reaches its conclusion, maybe that's what... Because he was wearing a regular suit as an old man in the future, so he might have gone back to his regular suit eventually, but maybe like at some point after parts of Bulletproof story, Mark then goes back to the suit, or maybe he's going to go back to it next season. I don't know. I'm curious to see how this all shapes up and how this all plays out. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.